Welcome to Fort Worth 148's podcast, where we meet to discuss Masonic topics and strive to build value in the Brotherhood. The opinions and statements of the participants do not represent any positions or stance of any Grand Lodge or Lodge, and are solely the viewpoints of the participants.
Wednesday night, bros. It's time to record. This is episode 17. This is Rhit Moore, past master and current secretary of Fort Worth 148.
Grant Gates, current Tyler 148.
Gabriel Jagush, Master Mason with 148.
Hey.
Glad to be back again, bros. We've got a interesting podcast that's relevant this time of year for Texas Masons, I know for sure. So we got events first, Gabe?
Yes, we do. In Temple news, the Knights of St. Andrews of the Fort Worth Scottish Rite Valley have new members. On Wednesday night, 5 true Masons became 5 good Knights when they had the Order of the Thistle conferred upon them. So congrats. Texas Chapter 362 and Texas Council 321 had their officer elections on Tuesday night. So congrats to our officers-elect for the year of, 2017-2018. The list is as follows. For Texas Chapter 362 of Royal Archmasons, our High Priest will be Robert Trevathan, our excellent King, James Jones, our excellent Scribe, Bruce Hammond, past High Priest, our Treasurer, the very excellent Steve Wolf, past Grand High Priest, our Secretary, Neil Addy, past High Priest, Captain of the Host, Kenneth Griffin, past High Priest, Principal Sojourner, Henry Hash, past High Priest, Royal Arch Captain, David Kisselberg, past High Priest, Master of the Third Veil, William Nash, Master of the Second Veil, Gabriel Jagush, Master of the First Veil, Robert Cook, Guard, Philip Valdez. For Texas Council 321, Royal and Select Masters, our Thrice Illustrious Master will be Robert Trevathan, our Right Illustrious Deputy Master will be James Jones, the Illustrious Principal Conductor of the work will be Bruce Hammond, past Thrice Illustrious Master, the Treasurer will be Very Illustrious Steve Wolf, past Grand Master, the Recorder will be Neil Addy, past Thrice Illustrious Master. The Chaplain will be Henry Hash, past Thrice Illustrious Master. Captain of the Guard will be Kenneth Griffin, past Thrice Illustrious Master. Conductor of the Council will be David Kisselberg, past Thrice Illustrious Master. Steward will be Gabriel Jagush, and Sentinel will be Philip Valdez. In local news, Haltom City Riverside Lodge number 1331 had a really eventful stated meeting. They had a scholarship presentation night with over 70 Masons, Eastern Star Sisters, and welcome visitors present. 18 visitors from Fort Worth Lodge and Crowley Lodge were also present, with Crowley Lodge successfully taking the traveling gavel. Crowley Lodge, Fort Worth Lodge is coming for you. In national news, Columbus, Ohio, the Northland Masonic Temple has once again been the target of vandalism. Last week, they got hit by bright blue spray paint graffiti on the back of their lodge and on their front sign. They took a couple days, cleaned everything up, and began to resume life as normal. But it wasn't long before the sign was vandalized again. Fortunately, this time, the vandal was witnessed in action and arrested by police after they managed to stop his vehicle later on. He actually took off. It's believed that the same vandal is behind both incidents, so brothers, best of luck. Maybe it's time to invest in cameras and maybe a really big dog. But best of luck. In Portage, Wisconsin, Fort Winnebago Lodge number 33 had to call in a tow truck from Blystone's Towing in order to move their safe. Apparently, it was quite the amusing sight because they're moving down the block to a new temple. The old temple's getting torn down to build a parking lot, unfortunately. But they've got a new building. But they needed some help with the 1-ton safe, so we can't blame them, so they had this big old tow truck, pulling a big old safe behind it. Best of luck with the move, brothers. In news abroad, in Oslo, Norway, my apologies in advance as I'm going off of Google Translate. I don't speak dansk or norsk, so I'm doing my best here. A 67-year-old man is being charged with attempted extortion. The victims? One of the lodges that meet in the Freemasons' Hall at 23 Blegdamsvej in Copenhagen, Denmark. He had filmed some of their degrees or meetings. I'm not sure which one, but he'd filmed some of the ritual, is what the article said. and he was attempting to extort them to the tune of 33 million Danish kroner, which is about $5 million US. So my understanding is that this occurred in the Danish Freemasons Hall over the period of January 2016 to November 2016, and not 100% clear on this translation, but it seems like he tried it in April 2017 with a Norwegian lodge, or he may have made the threats of extortion from Norway to Denmark in April 2017, but I'm not really sure. It's not clear as to whether or not he was a member of the fraternity, but fortunately it sounds like the charges are for attempted extortion, not successful extortion. The perpetrator has now been extradited to Denmark after being held in Norway. Following his arrest in Oslo, I believe they held him for about a month. But now he's in Denmark and he's awaiting trial. So best of luck to our Danish brothers in having a little justice laid down. Okay, so the question I have for tonight is, how do we present change in the lodge in a healthy manner? So, whether it's a big thing like changing dues, or whether it's a small thing like, hey, do we want to use gloves during degrees? How might we pitch this towards the lodge as a whole, either towards a stubborn crowd that doesn't want to change, or maybe towards a crowd that is too eager to change?
First thing you do is get out your thesaurus and find different words besides change. You don't use that word. That's a catchword. I mean, when people hear that, they shut it off because they don't want to change anything. And your example, white gloves, we're not changing anything with that. We're just kind of tying in traditional masonry because it's something that's been done in the past. Another big one is like the chamber of reflection that didn't make it real big in America, although it's here. And lodges are talking about doing it. People are like, oh, you're changing things. We're not changing anything, So be careful how you use that word if you do. And I recommend wiping it out of your Masonic lexicon.
I always recommend the compliment sandwich, where you go, okay, guys, you've been doing this really, really good, but here's all the stuff we gotta make different because you're not doing it right. But you tried really hard, and that's awesome, and end it on a high note where you're just like, yeah, everyone's great, but everyone vote for this. Okay, thank you, and move along. Just like
the way that I've heard that one phrased when I was in school, they called it the plus delta method. So all the pluses and then all the deltas, and then you hash back to the pluses. So yeah, compliment sandwich is a pretty good way to put it.
Well, in anything that you present to the lodge, especially controversial stuff, do your research. And I think that's something that it was a hard lesson I learned on many occasions when there's a glaring problem in lodge. Take your pick, whatever it may be. One of them was when I wanted to buy leather aprons as opposed to cloth aprons. I just thought it was nicer, but did no research, had no presentation to it, and had no backing to it. So whether it's raising dues, raising degree fees, buying aprons, wearing white gloves, do your research. Make a presentation. Convince the brothers before you ever make a proposal to enrich masonry with something, because you're not changing it. You're making it better. That's the way you should feel, whatever it may be, and explain it to them.
So basically, you want to come armed to the teeth with knowledge.
You got it. Because that idea came to you because, you see a glaring deficiency, and you feel in your heart of hearts that this enrichment would make the lodge better. So explain that to the other brethren. They don't feel the way you do right now. They maybe they haven't seen it. They got a blind eye to it. Do the research, like I said, come armed to the teeth, ready to roll with it, and start convincing brothers. Because
I like to.
That's the way it works.
I like to present things, I like to give people paper, like, okay, this is what I'm talking about, and this is what the plan is, to a point where if they voted in and I got hit by a truck the next day, they could pick up and run with it, right? And I think if you come to them with that much knowledge on a topic, be able to convince yourself of what you want to do, and be your toughest critic. That way, when you walk in, like, you've asked yourself the hard questions, so you come with the answers. That's typically how I like to research stuff.
Well, and then in addition to that, so answering all the tough questions before you even get there, I think that's one of the reasons why maybe you should never try doing this on your own. Always have a second and a third. Somebody that can second the motion, and then somebody else that can argue in favor of it without having to propose or second it. Because those two guys, they can brainstorm with you for weeks prior to you making that decision to propose it in lodge.
No, you got that. You hit the nail on the head, because you need to form your unofficial committee of guys that you really brainstorm with. And before that stated meeting, before you ever make the presentation, you've talked to every active and semi-active Mason that you can get their ear on about it before the lodge before you ever get to stated meeting. So you know what you're going into. And if a brother has a concern, you talk to him about it before lodge ever comes up. So almost you could go to stated meeting knowing it's the sealed deal, where you thought it was going to be controversial. But because of your research and legwork, it became uncontroversial. And
even if it's something
unanimous.
Even if it's something that's harmless to begin with, or that seems harmless to begin with, it's always good to do that legwork first. One of the brothers of our lodge asked me about, hey, I'm thinking about proposing this. I want to make this group that does a certain activity, and I want to propose it in stated meeting. What's the best way of doing that? And I was telling him, like, well, talk to the secretary first. So you want to grab Rhit, talk to the worshipful first, whether it's the current one or the one in the future or whatever, right? Grab a couple past masters, and then just make sure that enough people know that you're going to bring it up in stated, regardless of whether or not it's a dramatic change or not. Because even if it's something very positive, and something that everybody might vote on affirmatively anyway, people don't like surprises.
Yes, stated meeting is not for surprises. Those are checked at the door.
But Lord, have we had those?
Oh, yes, and we've learned and grown from them. We'll have them again. Every lodge does. It's just the nature of the beast. You just try your best as officers to keep that from happening. To where if you do have a surprise, you take care of it in stated meeting, and afterwards you go whisper some counsel. Say, hey, next time let me know that's coming, and I can help, either support or facilitate, whatever it may be. And eventually you'll work out most of those, but it'll always happen.
Okay, so then let's talk about tonight's content. Officer installations. So,
Absolutely.
Timely subject. Installations coming up at the end of this month, maybe at the beginning of next month. So, we figured it was appropriate.
Yeah, it's a beautiful ceremony. Very interesting, very deep. So I thought, what better worthy podcast than talk of installation?
What better worthy podcast? Humble words.
Yes. Me and Rick kind of had ESP on the subject, man. I think we pretty much suggested it in different text message strings about within 30 minutes of one another.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that was kind of cool because I had 2 different text messages from y'all, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. But let's crash course this. Let's talk about the very, very basics, and then we can kind of get into the details and maybe even like the planning of one, that kind of thing. So what is or are officer installations? For those of us who have never heard of an officer installation, what is that?
That's where you take the oath of your office. You bind yourself to certain charges as an officer. And our installation, and probably most, are very worshipful master and warden heavy. The majority of it deals with those guys. Every officer has a little bit, that they're obligated to do. But, the worshipful master, for instance, he takes on a lot of responsibility that he's binded himself to an oath with. And it stands until the next guy does it to take it over, so that's kind of the, what installation is for, to transfer officers, because if you don't do it, the same ones stay there.
So it's something that has to be done officially then, otherwise they're not, I guess, kosher. I don't know what you would want to say. Legit.
Exactly.
21st century parlance.
So
Yep.
if you just have an officer vote and everyone goes, yeah, we don't really feel like doing an installation, doesn't count?
Does not count. If you do it too early, I think it's St. John's Day, on or after that day, up to the last day of July, if I'm not mistaken, in Texas, you can do installation. Anytime before or after that, null and void. And it's happened.
I've heard of that. So I guess that answers the question, when do installations take place?
There you go.
So who exactly, and I know you've mentioned the wardens and the worshipful master, who exactly is involved in an officer installation?
So if you have a full lineup, you've got 13. Worshipful master, senior, junior warden, treasurer, secretary, chaplain, senior deacon, junior deacon, senior steward, junior steward, marshal, master of ceremony, musician, and Tyler. And those are in order of rank. So your chaplain outranks your senior deacon, so on and so forth. So there's your lucky 13 officers, if you have a full installation.
What officers are you required to have? So certainly your wardens, your Tyler, secretary, treasurer. Are there any other installed officers you're required to have?
I believe you are required to have the deacons and stewards installed.
That's a good question. I would have to refer back to Grand Lodge law, because I don't think there is. The only required is the 3 principal officers that is required. Okay. But I could be mistaken.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Because
hold on, I've got the wrong monitor.
We do fall back to our ritual. Well, there are lodges out there that only have 3 people show up.
Yeah. So I'm curious about that. What if you have a lodge of 3 active members?
Then you open in the master's degree and you've got the 3 principal officers. Let's see. It was a couple of years before I was master and a couple of years after. We had just 5 installed officers: worshipful master, senior, junior warden, treasurer, and secretary. The rest, nobody else was installed. They were pro tem the whole year.
Wow, that must have been...
If we had enough to show up.
How long ago was that?
Let's see, 9-10 years ago, and then like 5 and 6 years ago. Because there was a period. Yeah, when I was master, we had grown up, and I had a full line. I installed 13 officers, but shortly after my year, guys just left in droves.
Wow.
And we've been rebuilding since. That's what you get, though, for letting guys in, because that's when we first started the internet and started piling guys in and just handing petitions out left and right. Oh, come on in. You emailed us, meet us up here. We'll get you a petition, get it all signed up, get you in. Dues were cheap. Degree fees were cheap. I mean, it was the perfect storm for people to just say, I'm bored with this. I'm walking away.
Whoa.
Oh, wow. Not to get off topic too far.
No.
No, that's interesting. Because that having that kind of boom and then collapse, we've talked about it before, how we do it now. It's been sustainable for at least the past couple of years.
Much more sustainable, because during that time, we did so many EAs. I mean, I looked at it just the other day on the Secretary's database of EAs that just never came back. I mean, we were proficient in the EA degree, to say the least, because we did it all the time. But these guys had nothing invested. We didn't have the systems in place to build the value to keep them coming.
So let's talk about some of the basics, man.
That's what I was going to say. The installing officer.
Okay.
There's requirements to be the installing officer, which you have to be basically a member of Grand Lodge, a past master, a line officer in the Grand Lodge line, or a past Grand Master. So not just anybody can do that ceremony, which makes it kind of special, and now they're open to the public. So it's important to have somebody up there that kind of takes it serious and does it well. Not that you can't read it, because that'd be a bunch to memorize, but a good.
That's one of the great things about installation. That I had a lot of enjoyment in last year was having families up in the lodge. I know a lot of our wives met for the first time at installation, although most of them have met at family day and things like that. But, it's kind of a turnout. Everyone kind of gets to dress up and go out and do something. And we typically have lunch and kind of make a deal over it, which is a whole lot of fun to get everyone up there. It's a great time to introduce somebody to Masonry as well, because it's open to the public and it kind of has some of the flair and feel of the lodge. The ceremony has a little bit of
Yes.
feel to it, so they can get a flavor of what you're doing when you close the doors. But it's something everyone can be there for.
Absolutely. I mean, it's open now, so I think it's great. Bring the families in, let them see it. Because it has a very, it is a ritual, and it has a very close feel to our degree, because it's solemn, it's serious. In the charges of the master and wardens gives you a great overview of what our symbols, what they mean to us, what they teach us, what we do in lodge. So it is a great thing to involve the families with. Although when I was reading about it earlier, it wasn't always open.
They used to be tiled.
They used to be tiled.
And way back when, my understanding is that they actually opened up what they called a past masters lodges. And the only people present in the lodge were past masters, and they would do the installing of the worshipful master.
Yep, that's what I was going to say, because when they would do an installation ceremony, and then when the worshipful master came to the part of the charge, and it had something to do with Royal Arch and all that, they would kick everybody out that wasn't or hadn't already received it, which is essentially past masters.
At the
so
time,
it was
being a past master was a requirement for the Royal Arch degree, and technically it still is. Yeah,
that's cool.
There's a way to get around it, which is the past master's degree in York Rite. But so I guess that's a very broad umbrella for who can be involved or is involved in an officer installation, which is kind of cool, because it's not just the people that are getting installed or that are doing the installing. It's who's watching too, which is kind of cool. Generally speaking, where do installations take place? Normally just the temple, right?
It has to be in your lodge room, or you have to get dispensation to hold it elsewhere, because you're opening a Master Mason's lodge and calling it to refreshment. So for it to be open, if you're not doing an open installation, you don't go to refreshment. But it's done in a Master's lodge, which your charter has to be present, furniture. So you got to be in your lodge room or get dispensation, because a lot of lodges do joint installation. Well, some. The ability's in our law book to do it.
Can you break that down for me in terms of, is that going to be like in parallel or one lodge after another, or what's the story with that?
Personally, I've never seen any, but the way Grand Lodge law reads is that it is permissible to do, but doesn't lay out instructions. So I take that as you could do it either or. All right, we're going to do our both installations over here at this lodge. We'll do ours first, then yours, or we'll do the Worshipful Masters at the same time.
That'd be
So
cool. For like sister, quote unquote sister lodges, that'd be neat.
Yeah, I mean, for lodges that are in that don't have a lot of members and don't have a lot of participation, it's a great way to cut cost with meals, time.
Yeah, and
just
then
do it
you get
all
to
at
see
once.
guys that you might not normally see too.
You got it. Say you got one guy in your district that does installations, feels comfortable. You might do 2 at a time, but the ability to do it is there.
Yeah, that's why I'm actually kind of thinking about going. If I wake up on time, I might go to Panther City's installation, which is in the morning, because ours is in the early afternoon, and theirs is in the morning. So if I wake up on time, I might go to that one as well, and just kind of spend an entire Saturday in the temple.
Omar had asked about the Lodge of Sorrow when we were talking about officers. If they're not installed in time, they hold over. And I don't think Lodge of Sorrow works that way, to where if you don't close it, it closes itself, or it becomes null and void. That's another one I'm going to have to look up about. But that's part of our installation ceremony in Texas, to where the outgoing master closes his Lodge of Sorrow, and then the incoming master opens one for the year. So if you do any funerals, you don't have to come to the lodge room to open up a Lodge of Sorrow to go do the ceremony at the funeral home, which is the way they used to do it in the old times, or getting more efficient, making it quicker and easier, because that would be tough.
Oh, absolutely. Now,
yeah, I mean,
I
people.
That Grand Lodge also opens a year-long Lodge of Sorrow. Is that right?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, maybe that was a different.
Last year.
Maybe that was a different state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know that Grand Lodge does funeral ceremonies. Grand Lodge officers will do them, but they'll do them, for another lodge.
So
but
bouncing,
I'm not aware.
Yeah. So bouncing back to the basics, then I guess kind of we've already talked about why we would have installations. It's that transfer of power, and it's not valid otherwise. How does an installation happen?
By diligently planning one.
I guess could you describe like the process of one?
Yeah, I mean, because for Texas, and I'm sure every other jurisdiction, they give you a monitor, and it has it in the monitor word for word how to set it up. If for Texas, it's on page 117 and on, but they've got a specific way you set the chairs up, where the officers are supposed to sit, then the installing officer, what they're supposed to say, all the emblems that are supposed to be out, because you'll set up a little quarter moon of chairs on the west side of the altar, and then have a little table by the altar with all these little symbols. You'll have the officer's jewels, every one that's being installed, Tyler's sword, Bible, square, compasses, rule, Grand Lodge law, charter, all those things, to where as you're being obligated to take care of them, the marshal will be holding them up, basically. Hey, this is the bylaws. Remember these? So, the guys are paraded in, the officers are paraded in at the installing officer's request, and seated, you present each officer, starting with the Worshipful Master, to get his duties. So I think he takes his oath first and then gets his charge afterwards, because everybody comes up one by one and takes their oath, and then the warden, I know the master gets a charge. I think the wardens do as well together. And then everybody else just goes back to their seat afterwards, because Worshipful Master's escorted to the east and the wardens are escorted. Then everybody else just goes sits where they're supposed to.
So now you've mentioned the Master of Ceremonies, right? And like looking at the ritual, it seems like that's a separate Master of Ceremonies, maybe just for the installation. he may not be the actual master of ceremonies for that lodge. What's his role in all of that? Or I guess not the marshal, the installing marshal.
The installing marshal, yeah, that can be any. That can be any master mason, and he's basically the guide. Keeps everything in order, because he'll present the officers, the installing officer, present it to the installing officers, and then bring them in. That tell him that they're duly qualified. Then bring them in, and then hold up all the emblems at the request of the installing officer, and usher everybody around, because he'll say, Brother Marshall, you'll present the worshipful master-elect for his, charge.
Now, does he actually get to carry the baton? like?
No, he doesn't carry the baton, because he does a lot of things. Like at the end of the worshipful master's oath, you will invest the worshipful master with the jewel of his office, which is the square. So you got to put the square on him, the jewel on him, which takes both hands.
Oh, okay.
So the staff, the rod, whatever,
that's why you got to get a holster.
Yeah, the staff holster. Yeah, but during the ceremony, you're holding up that plumb line and the Bible, and you're showing it all around the lodge room. So you got to have your hands free.
Yeah. So in terms of showing people stuff, so showing the new officers different tools and everything like that. There's there's two tools that I was looking at in the monitor that I was not familiar with. So what is the rule, and how is it different from the 24-inch gauge?
No, they're just using different word for it, but that is the 24-inch gauge. That's literally what I hold up, is the 24-inch gauge. Or the marshal, I say I. Same thing with the line. That's the plumb. So,
right. So let's talk a little bit about planning an installation of officers. So ideally, if anybody is listening to this episode to try and get tips, it is far too late. But what kind of event are we looking at when we do a installation? Are we treating this more like a stated meeting? Are we treating this more like a degree, a social event? What kind of atmosphere are we cultivating? What kind of protocol do we want to be following?
I would say yes to all of those, because it does want the degree feel, the ceremony, the ritualistic feel during the installation. And afterwards, I think it's a great thing to have a meal to where everybody can socialize. Because if your families are up there, there's no better thing than wives to meet wives. So give that opportunity for the social aspect of it as well, to where everybody can kind of let their hair down and have a good time. But the ceremony should be taken really, really serious, because it's beautiful. And if it is, that worshipful master should get goosebumps, because he realizes, oh Lord, that charter is in my hands. Because if you lose it that year, it's ultimately your fault, and you are in charge of it. So it should be serious. He should know what he's getting himself into after that ceremony.
Yeah, and you want to dress like you're going to a degree. You really don't want to show up in jeans and a polo shirt. It's not that kind of ceremony. It is a good excuse, like we were talking about earlier, to dress up and go out and go see everybody. Now, some lodges aren't going to do a social meal. That a lot of that depends on the lodge, because some lodges may not have their families participate. You
got it. Yeah.
We make it a pretty social event though, and we plan it out pretty far in advance. How much we're going to need to cook and who we're expecting, and we're doing brisket this year, right, Rhett?
Something along those lines. We'll see, because we got Sam's back to back. But one or the other we will. Yeah, and if you don't have your family show up, make plans to meet back at one of the officers' house and barbecue. Everybody bring a steak and a cigar and talk about your year going up. If your family's not interested in it, fine. make it a Masonic thing, and then go hang out for 2 or 3 hours and lay some plans out for your year. Get to know your officers. I think it's important. It's crucial to have those social interactions. Otherwise, you're going to be checking off a list. You're not going to be practicing Masonry.
So then, kind of touching on that atmosphere and treating it like a degree, the question I have written down in my notes is, what kind of ritual are we using, right? And I know that it's just monitorial. So, but would you say then that this is kind of almost a degree then in terms of what kind of ritual it is?
I don't know that I'd call it a degree, but I would certainly call it a ritual, because it's, it's opened in the Master Mason's degree. And we're very specific on what degrees are as far as Entered Apprentice Fellowcraft, that kind of thing. So I would certainly proclaim it a ritual because it's for those officers. It's not for anybody else, and they should be made to feel that way, that's their moment. They're being charged with some pretty intense obligations.
So then, other than who is running the show now, right? So, we've got the transition of officers and who all is in the new chairs and everything like that. What other kind of information or message are you trying to convey? Or I guess, is there a certain kind of message that we want to convey other than, hey, this is the new team?
Well, I mean, you certainly want to convey the solemnity of the whole thing, but that's really the Worshipful Master's prerogative on the message or, atmosphere he wants to set. Because when it's all said and done, he gets up and has a chance to say something, and it could be short, sweet. He could go into plans. He could talk for 15 minutes, whatever his prerogative is. But, the main thing you're trying to convey to these officers is that, you actually took on a duty. You have things you've got to do, and it's top to bottom.
Right.
If you do that part, you've done something good.
So then who would you say is actually in charge of the installation? Would it be the installing guy, the guy who's acting as the worshipful? Would you say it is the outgoing worshipful master? Or I guess the incoming guy isn't in charge until he's installed, but who would you say that for the purposes of that meeting is mostly in charge?
Well, it's twofold, because for the first half, it's the worshipful master that has been installed last year. And then as soon as that worshipful master is invested with it, the new worshipful master elect is invested with his jewel, he's now in charge of that lodge. So, I mean, I can't think of an instance to where he would have to outrank the installing officer, but he does in that lodge. So, it's technically those two would be in charge at different times.
Yeah. So then we kind of already talked about who can attend an installation. So, we've talked about open installations, families, closed installations, masters only, that sort of deal. So since we've already talked about who can attend an installation, who do you want to get to install your officers? I know we kind of talked about who is able to install, but if you are a senior warden, a brand new senior warden, starting to plan your year in the East, who do you want to get to install you?
Somebody that's inspired you, that you have respect for. It's bottom line. Because it does not have to be somebody in your lodge. It's somebody that really has spoke to you throughout your Masonic career, that's a past master or above, that when he comes in and does that installation, you're going to take it serious. While one of your best buddies that you joke around with all the time may be a past master, that may not be the best choice if you have another set you to fire in the catechism or philosophy or history, whatever it is, that guy started the spark that created your inferno to go to the east. That would be my choice, because he's probably going to do a little inspiring during your ceremony as well. They have a chance to say stuff off the cusp as well.
Cool. And so then, who do you want to invite to watch? So I know we kind of said family, ideally if you have an open installation. Other than your family, who if you're recommending, hey, make sure, don't forget to invite so-and-so. Who goes on to your, hey, don't forget to invite, John Smith or whatever? Who do you recommend?
You want to make sure and invite that guy that expressed to you some interest in Masonry. He didn't necessarily ask you how to become a Mason, but he asked you a pointed question, so he's kind of intrigued by it. Make sure you put him on your invite list, because there's a potential member, especially if you like the guy.
That's a really cool perspective. I like that, because it's looking towards the future.
Yeah, and certainly invite your family up there. My wife's been to 6 or 7 of them, because I've had dad, cousins, myself, uncles, you name it, installed as officers, to where, I've been installed secretary. This will be my 7th year. She's missed 2 or 3 of those, she's like been there, done that.
Yeah, I've seen
them
do this.
The wife started coming back. Yeah, but when the wife started coming back, she starts participating in those things again.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, so family may not always want to be involved, but invite that buddy, man, especially if you've had a little time with him and it's special to you and he'll know that it's special to you. Invite him up to see it, not with the hope that he's going to become a member,
but
just
hey,
know that there's an off chance. You got it, man. This is something really cool. It's an honor that I've been voted in as this, and I'd like to share it with you. And see if they'll buy it, because if there's a good man out there, when he sees that ceremony, he's going to be hard pressed not to get interested and start Googling. And it may take him a year or 2, but it will be on his mind. I promise you. That ceremony is stellar.
We had talked at one point about a 0 degree, and the installation is pretty close to that. Gives you a little taste, where you're not jumping in feet first, but it gives them an idea of, okay, so this is what these guys do. And, if they go and it just bores them to death, that kind of tells them what they need to know. So,
the compasses, in the ceremony, it's written plainly in the monitor. It teaches us to limit our desires in every station, that rising to eminence by merit, we may live respected and die regretted. Does that not say in different words what we're told the compasses mean in the degree? It's not word for word by any means, but it is essentially saying the same thing. So they get a bird's eye view of what's for. And when you start talking words like what the compasses mean, a good man that's interested in making himself better, his ears are going to perk up.
Laying that bait. So
you got it.
What kind of arrangements do you need to make with the building that you're hosting in? So, for us, we've got the temple. It's the dedicated place. I guess some lodges don't need to make arrangements with their buildings because, it is a dedicated lodge building. Our temple is a host to 4 blue lodges and about a gazillion appendant bodies. So what kind of arrangements do we need to make with a temple? So for those of us that use multi-purpose temples.
Well, especially for us that have multiple lodges, we share our lodge room with Panther City. So not only do you have to contact the temple, we need to contact that lodge as well and coordinate with them. Because typically every year we do our installation on the same Saturday, basically the first Saturday after we're able to legally do it. So you got to work with those kind of things, but it's simple. For us, it's simple. You just contact the building engineer or email him, and he'll put you on the list. Get the AC cranking, because otherwise you'll show up to the temple and it'll be locked.
So but communication is key.
Yeah, and the senior warden has a lot to do, which is part of it, to make sure that happens. That his installation ceremony is scheduled and set up, and everything's in order. That he's got a meal plan. Not that he has to do it. He just knows that these things are going on, because he can appoint people to do this kind of stuff. Because he's got a lot on his plate. He's got the job of coercing people nowadays into becoming an officer. Because months before installation, those 3 officers should have been the whole year kind of planning, who do we want to see come in, and if you're lucky, you get somebody that pops up and says, hey, I want to be this officer. And, hopefully should be good enough guy. You just plug them in there. Great. Thank you. That makes this so much easier, but it doesn't always happen that way. Guys are kind of reluctant, and you've got to confront, hey, how do you feel about this position? So he's got a lot on his plate, and senior warden plays a major role in that, because that's going to be his team next year. Same thing with the junior warden. They should get the worshipful master's advice for sure, but the senior and junior warden should really talk with each other who they want to see where. And they got a good team that they can work with.
So you kind of mentioned, you kind of touched on this, that it starts in advance. So when would you say you need to start planning the installation itself? Maybe not picking officers, but like planning the installation, the actual event. Because I know that officers, you're going to want to be looking for those guys from day one, but kind of the event itself, what are you thinking maybe?
Well, I think you should at least give yourself a month and a half lead time, but that's cutting it close. 2.5 months, because as senior warden going in, you're going to want to put your flair on it. You're going to want to do something different. A great example is Greg, our senior warden. If tradition prevails, he'll move forward. He wants to buy roses for the line officers, and then some other kind of flower for every lady that comes there.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah. So, not everybody has to do that, but put your own flair on it. Maybe you want to write a speech. Give yourself time to do that, but you've got to plan it out. Look over the ceremony in the monitor, see where you have time to speak, because, not that it's required of you, but it'd be kind of silly if you get up there and you don't say a few words at least. So there's a lot of things to account for, because you've got to get people in line to get the meal together. And hopefully you're decorating a little bit, because, where we do it stated meeting, you just come in and the tables are there and you sit down. And an installation, maybe bust out tablecloths if you have them, or centerpieces. And it doesn't have to be fancy. You can go to the dollar store and get a couple of flowers and drop them in something, just to make it different and have that feel of a special occasion. And you can't do that in a month's time.
Well, because we all have... You heard the man, dollar store flowers.
No, just kidding. That's a bad example.
That's a really good place to get that kind of
flowers.
Stuff.
If flowers start turning brown at Walmart, you can get them for 50 cents. Pick out the brown ones. She'll never know the difference.
And call on a few brothers. See what they've got at their place. And, if every table had a different centerpiece, who cares? As long as when people walk in, they see that there's a setup here, that this isn't your normal, your normal meal, your normal ceremony. There's some real nicety put into it, some flair put into it.
Man, can you imagine, since we're based in North Texas, centerpieces of blue bonnets and Indian paintbrush? That'd be cool.
We've got them. Cool.
So then, I guess, in terms of, so the minimum you want to do is month and a half lead time. So that's cutting it close. in terms of not day of, but maybe the hours and days leading up to that, how much time are you going to need to get everything physically set up before the event itself? So, we're talking about all these centerpieces and all the food and everything like that. What are we looking at here in terms of prep?
Yeah, and hopefully you have a team put together to where it's going to take you 45 minutes to an hour, because everybody's doing their thing. Because as senior warden, you're going to be down there opening, closing the Lodge of Sorrow, opening Master's Lodge, calling it to refreshment. Then you set up your lodge room with the chairs and all that. And it doesn't take much time. That takes maybe 15, 20 minutes, and you're set up for installation. So there's not a whole lot of lead time to it. And hopefully at the same time you're doing this Lodge of Sorrow stuff that doesn't require a lot of people to be there. You have another team upstairs setting out centerpieces, getting dinner ready for after the ceremony. So when everybody comes up the elevator, they walk into the room and it's all dolled up.
So all hands on deck and everybody working in parallel. Cool.
Yeah.
Why would you want to make an installation open to the public versus tiled and vice versa? Why might you want to have a tiled installation as opposed to a public one?
For me, masonry's for us. It's our thing. And I'm not bashing sharing, that installation ceremony with our families. I see it both ways. I get it. I'm fine both ways. But I certainly see where lodges, and there are lodges out there that do closed ceremonies. I was at one last year. It was beautiful. And it was for us as brothers. Because that's what masonry is all about.
Yeah, you mentioned that idea on last week's episode with the scene from Saving Private Ryan where he says, "No, I'm not going to tell you that one because that's for me."
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of that's a cool way to look at it. It's for us, but yeah, sometimes it is kind of nice to share. But I know, for example, in chapter, if you do there's this thing called the Zerubbabel Award that gets handed out every year.
Wow.
And there's points. You score points based off of certain things. How well your graded degrees go, how well your graded opening and closings go, and your installation. If you have a closed installation in chapter, it docks a huge number of points off of your scoring for the Zerubbabel Award. And I'm probably saying that wrong. But so I thought, so they're actually, the Grand Chapter of Texas actually encourages open installations because they dock points from that award.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact history of when and why it became public, but the sentiment I've gathered from most educated Masons is it was a way to get membership and include families and things like that to,
that 0th degree.
Yeah, showcase masonry, which, hey.
Now, Grand Lodge doesn't require you to do it either way.
No.
You have the choice,
Nope.
right? Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah, which is kind of nice because some lodges have certain cultures that you want to share everything, and some lodges have certain cultures where, hey, this is yours, and both of those are equally valid, I think.
And that's the point I'm trying to get across, because I think it's great either way you do it, because you're putting your flair on it, and that's what it's all about. If one worshipful master wants it closed one year and the next year the other one doesn't, that's beautiful. There shouldn't be any contention over that, because it's not cheapening our craft. It's not harming us. It's the same as the ceremony when you pass away. There's a lot of similarities between the two when it comes to divulging what we do as Masons. And I think it's been a good thing as far as the intent of sharing it with our families and everything like that. I think it's been great. I know my wife really enjoyed the first couple she went to.
after she learned the routine.
Exactly.
Or I guess before she learned the routine.
Did she get upstairs this year? kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She sits by the door.
That might happen.
She's ready to go
too, man. She was like, it was fun seeing everybody, but it was so long. Like, do I have to sit here the whole thing? I'm like, you can go.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can go hang out.
So, and that's why I have the utmost respect for the lodges that have the courage to do closed ceremonies as well, because a lot of folks frown on that, but they're doing Masonry the way they want to do it, and it's legal. So tear it up. I mean, make it your own. That's the whole purpose of this thing. Within our laws and guidelines, make this thing your own.
Yeah, and we fall back on that. It's a phrase we've said more than a couple times on this show before. Who are you to tell me what my Masonry is, right? And so live that through. Do that,
Yeah, and if having an open ceremony for installation cheapens it for you, close that bad boy up. But when the next master opens it up, don't judge him or don't discount his character for having an open installation. It's legal. You may not like it, it may not be your favorite thing, but you give him the respect of his own prerogative. Let him do his own thing and support him.
To be fair, there is also context as well. If your lodge has only ever done open installations, and if your lodge has only ever done closed installations, now nobody's saying you can't, but it might behoove you to follow tradition. So,
yeah, there's something about rocking the boat. Peace and harmony.
Peace and harmony. So, I guess kind of going with peace and harmony, how do you make this go as well as possible? What's like on your list of stuff to take care of? What's kind of like maybe the number one thing that you want to take care of to make sure that this goes as well as it can?
Have your agenda. The senior warden is the one that really needs to be running the show from top to bottom, and the worshipful master that's being uninstalled should have nothing but his heels up. He shouldn't have to worry about a thing.
Program.
Being uninstalled, delete. But yeah, you want to have your agenda already typed out on your computer of how things are going to go with the little speech you want to give. You've talked to the installing officer, so you're all on the same page with how he wants to do things and when you're going to be called up, all those kind of things, letting him know there's going to be family here. If the worshipful master wants to keep it short and sweet, all those things need to be communicated beforehand. And chatting with all your guys, because everybody being installed needs to know the ceremony, top to bottom. So they know what's coming next, and it all looks just as fluid as it, like we've done it 15 times. It's not, I don't think it's necessary to practice it, but I think it's necessary for everybody from the worshipful master down to the Tyler and everybody in between to read the whole ceremony in the monitor. So, when you're going to be standing up, when you're going to sit down, when you're going to go to your station,
no surprises.
All of that. You got it.
Well, and just like a degree, you may want to practice if you're going to have, say you're going to have people who haven't closed before in your closing. So you're going to put the new officers in their position to close. Make sure they know their lines at that closing. So it may behoove you to do maybe a practice run to make sure everyone's proficient on their opening and closings. So that yeah,
especially for the installing officer and the marshal, those two. If anybody's going to practice it, those two. Something that did come to mind, though, that you need to make sure you have in order is that list of supplies you need from the, the plumb or the rule. What was it called? The line, the rule, the compasses, square. You have to have that physically set on a table. And I've been to an installation before where you have to have your charter, and we have a little mini version of our charter rolled up like a scroll that we use in the ceremony. It took me 30 minutes to find it, and it. Of course, we didn't have to start late, but it was, basically finding it right on time, and it's just it's a sickening feeling, So that's something you want to prep when you're at lodge the week before or whatever, you gather all that stuff up and put it aside so you know right where it is and can set it out. The jewels and all that, they're easy. They're always in the same spot. But all of that stuff on that list of things you need on the table north of the altar, it's not stuff you use every day. Right. It's once a year.
What's your favorite memory from installation? Because both of you guys have been installed at least once.
Hands down, every year, I love all of it, but the senior warden's charge, it's just so inspiring. And every year I hear it, I tell myself, I need to go back and dissect that, write a paper about it, do some research, because it's beautiful. What the level means to us. It's just such an awesome explanation. So every year I've got a new favorite memory from hearing that because it's awesome.
Yeah, the first paragraph with that is pretty heavy, and I love that.
Exactly.
And for those of you that don't have a monitor, I'm going to take the time here and read that section, just the one paragraph. My brother, the level demonstrates that we are descended from the same stock, partake of the same nature, and share the same hope. And though distinctions among men are necessary to preserve subordination, yet no eminence of station should make us forget that we are brethren. For he who's placed on the lowest spoke of fortune's wheel may be entitled to our regard, because a time will come, and the wisest knows not how soon, when all distinction but that of goodness shall cease, and death, the grand leveler of human greatness, reduces us to the same state.
It's wicked. Giving me chill bumps right now, dude. It's crazy. It's good stuff.
That's some really good stuff.
There's so much stuff in ritual from all of the bodies that I've been in, but like stuff like this, where you have that huge sense of gravitas, like you end up just goosebumps everywhere. It's so cool.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, it's good stuff. So Gabe, I've only been to one installation.
The one that you were installed in, right?
The one I was installed in. So my first year as a Mason, I was an entered apprentice during the installation, and for some reason or another, I'm going to go ahead and assume I was working. Just kind of knowing myself, I was probably working, and I missed it. So the second year, I made it, and the whole thing blew me away. And honestly, my favorite part of it was in the middle of the ceremony. Greg's little girls, you can remember this, start running up and down the aisles playing. We're in the middle of the ceremony. That was awesome. It was really fun to have, the kids and the wives and everyone in there doing the same thing, and then spending some time with each other. For me, that's kind of what I look forward to most about the installation this year is the social aspect. Everyone getting together, having so many people to chat with that you don't even have the time to do it. I really love that social aspect, getting the families involved, and I know that's something I mentioned quite a bit, but man, I love getting the families involved in what we do because I think it brings value to them, regardless if we're doing an installation or not. Just getting everyone together is great. It's just an excuse to do it, and it's an excuse to do it where everyone gets to dress nice. So that's even more fun. Dressing up is fun.
That's cool.
That reminds me because last year I remember that very clearly when the kiddos were running and playing, and we all got a kick out of it and thought it was cute, and I mean, we all thought it was great. We didn't miss a beat. It was a beautiful part of the ceremony. When I was installed the first time as junior steward, my kid Cade was 2, maybe even younger than that, and he did the same thing. I look over, see him running around, and I'm just kind of giggling and smiling, sitting there at the chair, and I look up, and I'm getting stone cold looks from past masters in the seats over in the southeast corner, and it was like, oh Lord. they didn't appreciate the kiddos running around back then. So it's awesome to see how our lodge has evolved into that, to where families are more than welcome. And
I think a lot of that has to do with a ton of our guys being younger dads. That I think
absolutely
has a huge part to do with it.
Well, yeah, because
that's a lot of it's a lot of fun to be, to have other dads to come in and go, oh my God, guys, seriously, the child was covered head to toe in poo, and everyone going, yeah, we've all been there before,
Yeah, there's that sense of understanding.
Yeah, that sense of group support, that, oh man, that you're gonna survive, you made it, like you got through that one, good job. Now here's the next one that's coming. Look forward to this,
Absolutely,
it's great. But no, I think these days, if someone tried to shoot a dirty look over that, would not go over well in the lodge.
Just get the marshal to walk over and smack him with a baton.
Be like, Tyler, escort him out. That look is not acceptable at 148 over.
Dispatch with him according to his.
You must say all cute, or you will be out of here like 3 seconds.
So who installed you guys? And I guess Rhit, because you've been installed a gajillion times. Who installed you the first time?
As worshipful master.
Well, yeah. Let's go for two. Who installed you the first time as any officer, and then who installed you as worshipful master?
So the first time it was Bob Holmes. That was my. I'm pretty sure it was my cousin was being installed as master that year, and I was being installed as junior steward, and it was Bob Holmes, the junior past master, doing the ceremony.
Okay, and so Bob Holmes, past master of our lodge, DDGM at one point. Yeah, he's an awesome guy.
Overall, fantastic human being, in almost every measure that you can think about. So,
yeah. So I'll give you two. I'll give you 3 guesses who did my second one, but the first 2 don't count.
Your dad, and your dad.
Yes, it was my dad. Yeah. How could it be anybody else?
Yeah. It was, and that legitimately was me kind of guessing, but I had a pretty good feeling.
Yeah. And in fact, Rhit, I think my answer is the same. Wasn't it your dad last year doing it?
Pretty for sure. Yeah. It was my dad, wasn't it?
It was your dad. Yeah.
And for those of you that don't know, Rhit's dad is Billy Moore, and Billy is an awesome guy. So.
Yep, he's past master 2 times over.
Yeah,
we recycled him in the hard years.
Yeah, you and your dad sat through some of the harder times that this lodge has seen through. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, fun times as worshipful master my year, no doubt about it. Because our lodge was at the peak. We had a reputation across town as being a growing great lodge. And it crumbled. It was a sandcastle is what it was. It was a beautiful sandcastle, and the tide came in and washed it right out.
But now things are better.
We're building a stone wall now.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of cool. It's cool that you say that about the stone wall, because there's a passage from a chapter in Old Tyler Talks that talks about masters each year. They struggle and struggle and struggle, and even though it comes at great personal cost, they haven't built a whole wall, but they've put one stone in for that 1 year, So I thought it's kind of cool that you mentioned that, because I was thinking about that today. I read that chapter today, and I was going, man, that's really cool.
Would you say that wall is built out of stone masonry?
With timbered mortar. Yeah, because you could say we built a wall last time with untimbered mortar if you wanted to go real Masonic on it. Because it was mushy mortar. But that wasn't the first time that happened at our lodge either. That happened a total of 3 times since I'd been a member. 3 different times that we built it up, but that was when we had built it up the most. You know, it really had a head of steam, and it just collapsed. And I blame most every bit of it. There's a little part of it because we were so young and we didn't have older past masters involved with us to keep us on an even keel, but it was mostly just letting whoever in. Because
going back to episode 2 right there, guarding the whiskey.
Yeah, you got to. It's crucial.
It's a big deal. You got to be mindful of who comes in, because you bust up your peace and harmony, and man, you're not going to have peace or harmony. And
it's over.
That's no fun.
Yeah. And most of those guys that get impatient and bust up your peace and harmony, if you make them wait for that petition before they ever get in, they get impatient. You never see them again. And you've saved yourself a ton of headache, although he may have seemed like a pretty good guy up front. He's what's in it for me kind of guy. I want it now kind of thing. He won't last to get that petition. You won't ever have to deal with it.
All right. Well, good talk, guys.
All right, let's talk events. So in Texas on July 9th and 10th, that's Saturday, is the Texas AMD Day. And they'll be doing a few things on Friday night, but Saturday is the day. AMD Day for Texas is in Waco this weekend. So if you're a member of an AMD council here in Texas, please come by. TAMDA will be accepting on-site registration for $20. The group photo will be taken at 8:45 a.m. on Saturday, and tuxedos are preferred for the photo. They will be conferring 10 degrees, including the Masonic Order of the Bath, after the AMD Council is closed. Most Worshipful Grand Master Jerry Nelson Kirby will be the keynote speaker. It sounds like a great time. So, again, if you're an AMD Council member in Texas, this Saturday, July 10th, AMD Day, Waco. $20. Bring a tuxedo if you have one. In North Texas and Tarrant County, on June 9th, Arlington Lodge 438 is presenting the Golden Trowel Award to Past Master Bruce Dalton on Friday. A light dinner will be held at 6:30 p.m. with a trowel ceremony to follow. Arlington Lodge is located at 1415 West Abrams Street in Arlington, Texas. You may RSVP to Dalton Family at sbcglobal.net or 817-223-1471. On June 11th, the funeral services for Brother Steve Shipp, a past master of Arlington 438, will be held on Sunday, June 11th at the Moore Funeral Home, which is located at 1219 North Davis Road in Arlington. Please arrive at 12:30 and remember to bring your apron and wear a dark suit. Our condolences to Brother Shipp's family and to Arlington 438. On June 16th, Arlington Lodge 438 is having a fish fry for family night, so dinner is at 7 p.m. Come on by. On June 17th, on the Saturday, El Texa chapter of The Grotto is having their information event and dinner. Drinks are at 6:30 p.m. and dinner is at 7 p.m. The location will be the Elks Lodge at 3233 White Settlement Road in Fort Worth. Please RSVP by June 10th and contact Prophet Buford Young at 817-709-6637. On June 26th, River Oaks Lodge is having their installation. Brother Sam Levacy is being installed at the age of 100 years old. Most Worshipful Grandmaster Jerry Kirby will be presiding over the installation, and the Tarrant County Commandery Standard Guard will be presenting the American and Texan flags. The meal will be at 6 p.m. and the installation will begin at 7 p.m. Fort Worth Lodge's very own senior warden, soon to be Worshipful Master Greg Wright, will be smoking the barbecue. So please join us in welcoming our favorite centenarian, Brother Sam, to the Oriental Chair. And in upcoming temple happenings, on June 19th, Texas Chapter 362 of Royal Archmasons will be conferring the Royal Archmason degree on 3 worthy most excellent masters. If you are a Royal Archmason, please come by and join us. It'll be great. It's one of my favorite degrees. On June 24th, Fort Worth Lodge 148 will be hosting its installation. If you are a friend or family member of a Fort Worth Lodge member and are interested in attending, please talk to us. On June 27th, Texas Chapter and Council will be having an open installation of officers. We'll be kicking off at 6:30 p.m. in the Red Room on the 3rd floor of the temple. So, you don't even have to be a Royal Arch Mason to come on by for this. So if you're interested, come on by. It'll be interesting. As always, Fort Worth 148 meets on the second Monday of each month, starting dinner at 6 p.m. for a 7 p.m. stated meeting at 1100 Henderson Street in Fort Worth, Texas. If you want to touch base with Fort Worth Lodge 148, hit us up at Fort Worth Lodge 148 on Facebook or info148 at fortworth148.org. If you live in the 64th District of the Grand Lodge of Texas and you want to promote an event, please reach out to them at 64th.org, 64th.org. All right, guys, so let's get some closing thoughts on tonight's episode. Cliff notes. Let's go for, max of like a minute and a half. Closing thoughts.
I think if anything, if you take anything from this episode, if you're senior warden especially, make that ceremony your own. Put your own flair to it. If the lodge doesn't have the budget to do the things you want to do, scale it down and maybe put a little bit of your own money, because this is a once in a lifetime kind of thing going into the East. You may do it again later, but it's not the same feeling you have in the pit of your gut when you're being installed, like, oh Lord, it's game on. So plan ahead and make that thing your own. Have some words put together to, thank your lodge for the big honor that you've got, and make it something special for yourself. Because if you leave it up to the lodge, they're going to plan an installation for you and maybe cook a good meal, but it's your chance to put your flair onto it. Get the guys ready for what they're in for your year.
I guess my closing thoughts would be, I've been to one of these. We had a good time. I like the social aspect. Invite your family, bring your kids, bring your wife, and be ready to hang out afterwards. Don't rush home by any means, because it's a great event, and you can kind of share it with everybody.
Yeah, and I guess my thoughts on this one, I'm looking forward to seeing one for the first time, because I've never seen one of these, so being brand new to all of this,
awesome.
I am, very excited about seeing them, and, maybe helping out in the kitchen or something like that, or I don't know what, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, if you do Marshall, you'll be down there setting up, going over what your footwork, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have a team for the tables, so
that'll work out great. So
yep.
Let's, this is a longer quote this week, but this week's quote is from one of my favorite books. I talked about it very briefly a couple minutes ago. It's called Old Tyler Talks by Brother Carl H. Claudy. And the two main characters of Old Tyler Talks are the new brother and the old Tyler. And so the new brother constantly goes up to the old Tyler and he says something, or he asks the Tyler a question, and the Tyler confuses the heck out of the new brother every time, and then, comes out with a good lesson. So in the chapter, and this is the chapter title, on the painful process of becoming a past master, the new brother and the old Tyler have a chat about the newly installed worshipful master, Brother Jameson. And so Brother Jameson makes a very ambitious speech, and the old Tyler's a little skeptical, which kind of really surprises the new brother. And the old Tyler explains that no worshipful master ever truly succeeds at the goals that he sets at the beginning of the year. And the new brother asks, well, do you think he shouldn't try then? And the old Tyler responds, heaven forbid. Of course he should try. We should all try. The officers should try, and they do try. But if we all succeeded in our straining after perfection, there wouldn't be any fun left in the world at all, or any glory in Masonry. In a perfect world, Masonry would have no place. Since Masonry is in existence to make men better, if all men were best, it wouldn't be needed. No, brother, it's a good thing for the lodge that Jameson can't make this a perfect lodge of perfect Masons. If he could, we wouldn't have any excuse for being. But if he didn't try, he wouldn't be the good man that he is.
All right, boys, we ready to close this thing down? All right, this is Rhit Moore signing off.
Gates.
Gabriel Jagush signing off.